One Love and Wellness. Welcome to this episode of Heart Happy Hour. Kitty, come here. Hey, kitty, kitty, come here. I'm gonna tell you about a dance I know. The golden brick ride is going low. Step to the left, twice and glide. And rings high, right, and slide. World peace, prosperity. Step back twice, then turn to the right. Do the golden brick glide. I'm gonna tell you. One Love and Wellness family, thank you for joining me on this episode of Heart Happy Hour. We have some things to continue from the last episode, and we will be starting a few new things. Leaving off with some of the things from last episode, we're going to talk about the death signal. That was something that I didn't get the chance to talk more about. We're going to talk about how the thing that I wanted to talk about on the Hermetic website, the chat, whatever it's called, the place that I found this was on a Hermetic website. And so in reference to sleep and dreams, we're going to also talk about mental health. There's an aspect of mental health I want to talk about this month. I want to talk about a poem that I wrote. The word that we're going to talk about is the word that we missed, or we started a smidgen of last episode. So this episode, my poem is about that word, and then we will also speak on that word and other words that have a significant relation to it. So my poem today is called To Exist or To Be. That's right. So it is the definition of the word that I'll be discussing later on. I don't know if I want to tell you first, or I want you to guess, or if I want you to try to remember from last episode. But at the end of the episode, I did give a smidgen of a definition and touch on it enough to say, hey, next time we'll get back to this. But there's a list of some other stuff that I may or may not get to. We'll see. There's also the full moon that is in, excuse me, full moon this month in June will be in Sagittarius. And that comes on the 14th of June. And that is actually 1 week, 7 days in front of the summer solstice. So we'll have a conversation about all of the above. So let's get it started. One Love and Wellness, love plus art equals wellness is our sponsor. So Heart Happy Hour is brought to you by them. So let's start with the poem, and then we'll go into the rest of our segment. And our word, finally, and I'll probably do something of a supernatural sort of thing. I have all these experiences. I've had Matrix moments before Matrix was a movie, Harry Potter moments before Harry Potter was a movie. And several other movies that I've seen that I can relate to, even some books that I've read. And I believe I expressed my introduction or my meeting of Paramahansa Yogananda. That is his name when I said I met a yogi. Paramahansa Yogananda. The autobiography is the book that I read, and I participated here in DC in a few of their events. I also I'll get into that segment later, but I have some more stories to tell. I always tell some very interesting stories, and thank you for joining me. So the poem, To Exist, To Be, and that is the definition of the word that we have to discuss later. Okay, to be or not to be is an age-old question, merely existing from the suggestion, amassed and revealed after the thoughts and dreams become real. concealed in its essence, subliminally progressive, incubating as particles rearranged into its current form, basically renewed and reborn, boiled down to a formula written in letters of dots and lines. Truth is a line drawn on sandy shores and sandy ground, formed in lightning storms, charging crystals, firing like pistols and pistons on all fours, forging forth on a new course. Every second, a second chance to recourse the force into the new choice. If given voice from the source, to merge or diverge to a new herd, heard only by the organic plug, shrugged off like a bug plucked into the zapper. As the captain of the ship, you can pick which port to hit and how long you stick to the script of the intended course, charted by the sun, showing signs of maritime laws. Yah, he vowed he, land ho, H2O or H3O3, is a rough sea of cold-pressed truth, a solution of planetary pus pouring through the veins of Gaia's gush, twisting her liquid like life force. Her dew glistens in the sun, fresh as the brew percolates. Her plates craft and break ground, starting with the sound, groaning chants, charging, found a new route to let it out and to advance, and bring about the newborn sprout, having clout from merely existing. The superhero in you can be true, if only you knew what you knew before you grew or listened to those who won't inner ear without fear. What's dear and near? Lend me your ears, my dear. The vortex is here. Hear the voice of the choice, whispered clear. Your pearly oysters turns sand free of fear. Shed a tear until the persistent creations appear to be and to exist. And so it has the definition of the word that we're going to discuss today. And I even said what is the four-letter word in Hebrew. Yah, he vowed he. That's how I say it for now, until I tell you later more in detail about the word. Now, let's talk about how many projected launches are for the month of June. Today is the 3rd of March. The 3rd of June. Why did I go back to March? Today is the 3rd of June. And it is also the day that Mercury is going back direct. And, you know, the remnants of the movement, the beginning of the re-movement, you know, because when it's in retrograde, it's like it's at sleep. So it's kind of standing still and everything else is moving forward around it, which makes it appear to be moving back, but it's basically more or less in sleep mode. Still, you know, it's going to be everything else moving faster and on its way along and through. So that means that we are going to start seeing our technology getting back on point. And because I knew Mercury was in retrograde at this point, I'm not going to say withheld or withdrew, but I stood fast on some areas where I saw some give and some flexibility that was not good for certain results to occur. So um, maybe say took a back seat on some things until around now. And those things that I had taken a back seat on, or that had taken a back seat, are now starting to manifest and produce and move forward and progress. So, hey, I think I did the right thing. So, the launch is in the month of June. Okay, it's projected around 20 to 21, but 10 of those are on the last day of June, or on the same day, which is June 29th. And on June 29th, those are launches from all over the world: New Zealand, China, California, Florida. All of these different places around the globe have registered the desire to attempt on that day. So however many is launched, don't know. I'm sure that it will be more than one that is successful. And that is a very interesting dynamic I will be tuned into to see what the actual energy feels like when we have all this activity in and out of our air zone, our airspace, our bubble. So let's see what the weather looks like, and what the energy is, because I'm certain that those things have an influence on our spatial activity, our cosmological impacts. I believe it will be sensed and sensible, something that can be measured. So, the last thing I want to say about the June is that I discovered, from what I looked at, from what I saw, that it might not be as they present, what they say, because if there have been, and I got this I watched a comedy show today, and the guy, he was dropping knowledge all over the place. And I don't know if you ever saw Eddie Griffin. A couple of times what he did was the same sort of thing. He got a couple things stuck in his craw. Just like Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle does some topics that are, very poignant at that time. And so Cat Williams, I watched his World War III video, and he talked about that there were 300 planets or so that we have so-called discovered, not discovered, but have visited or have had some, I don't know if we want to say we've circled them or orbited or whatever, but I just have a feeling that, this schedule is just to give us something, to talk about and to look at, that it happens a lot more than they're actually releasing and revealing. And that's nothing new. That's, but so good. They're finally saying something that's given us a lot more insight to some of the activities that we probably need to have some awarenesses of. And so June is expected to be a pretty busy month. And it's interesting to see what our summer will look like after they have launched all these from the same place. At the same time, or on the same day, all these places around the world. I'm getting my words together now. Pardon me. Love myself. Not getting mad at myself for the words that are flumbling out my mouth. So I did want to talk about, in dreams, I have noticed, and I did a test, and I found out that there was a comment that I read that, I remember a lot of my dreams. I have a whole dream world. I have a whole dream family. I have neighborhoods that I've lived in, people that I've lived with. I see folks that have been previously here in this realm, on that realm, and I see folks that I never saw on this side before. and I've seen them for years. I recall some of the dreams from me as a child, and some of those same people are in my dreams now, but they are, older or more mature, or they've actually, something has been revised, but it's still that same essence of that energy that it's representing in my dream. So I found out that if you sleep in the buff, if you sleep in your birthday suit for the most part, when you're in your dreams, you'll be in your birthday suit for the most part. And I have found that when I find out or figure out, or it comes to me that I am naked in my dreams, because, I do the buff thing, I do the birthday suit for the most part. But I find that I'm in the buff in my dreams. But guess what? I don't mind. I don't even run to try to put clothes on. I'm like, you've seen everything by now. So if I never attempt to cover myself up. And that's something that it took for them to make that comment for me to actually observe it and begin to make some notes for myself. And what I did notice is that for sure, I end up being naked in the majority of my dreams. Or I do not see my body in a way that I can recognize whether I'm clothed or not in some cases. I notice that I'm naked. In other cases, I don't even notice, because I don't even look at sometimes I see my face, sometimes I'm other things. Like, for instance, one dream I dreamt that I was 3 different beings in the same dream. I was a scientist, I was myself, and I was a dog. And so I was working with myself, trying to tell, I have this Dr. Doolittle thing. I can talk to animals and communicate with them. And prime example, last couple of weeks, and I think you might have even heard it in some of my shows. I had some squirrels in my attic, and they were very, very, very active. But so was I, and I was banging on the roof. Get out of here. I ain't finding another room. Stop making so much noise. All the different, with that attitude. And so eventually I started playing this tone, this sound, this sonar that was supposed to get rid of them. And, mice as well. And some of them, I got it off of YouTube, but some of them have such a high-pitched noise. I believe it's undiscernible to our register, to the ear to the decibels that we register, or the spectrum that we listen on, for the most part. And so, but one day, I had a conversation with a couple of different critters. There were some birds that were telling me that I needed to stop playing that sound, because it not only affected the squirrels and the mice and rats or whatever else there might be in that earshot or in the area, in an area to hear it, but it also affects the birds. It also affects, the other natural beings around, possibly even affecting the plants and the trees. I didn't check with them to find out. I laughed, but I talked to them, and I believe they talk back in their own ways. A lot of times in the wind, I'll listen and hear. I say so many things on this show that I would not say anywhere else. But I have found some like-minded tribes that I have been able to relate to, who can relate to the things that I discuss. In particular, this Dr. Doolittle thing, I thought there would be some people that would be totally turned off by it. But come to find out, they're experiencing some similarities, and we all can, have chats and discuss it. Also, so the squirrels and I had a conversation. Actually, the birds were the go-between at first, and then I believe the squirrels and I started having a conversation. But the squirrels are busybodies, and they forget. I think they have short-term memory issues. I think that's why they do what they do when they're burying their nuts. But anyway, so the birds were the go-between, and now I have no noise. I had years of squirrels in my attic. Years. I've been here almost 9 years. At least 7 of those 9 years have been very, very active squirrel. And the guy that used to live just beneath me, he mentioned that, he had a relationship with his squirrels, and he even knew that, one of them was a couple, and the guy would go out late at night, and then when he would come back, the girl squirrel, whether it was sister, mother, whatever, would be yakking at him saying, don't do, blah, 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 right? So anyway, I wanted to mention that, but I also want to go on to the last thing that the third of the fourth things that I'm going to continue from the last episode, which was, we talked about the death signal. And I just call it that because that's what it signals to me, that there is a death, or that a death is about to occur, or, so it is about to, or it has occurred. And so how I found out that that was the case, I've had several of my band members, several of my friends, several of my family members that have passed, and I get like a signal just before. How I discovered it was not even in relation to my family. I discovered it in relation to, I was watching a TV program, and Whitney Houston came on, and she was singing and she did something, but while I was watching her on TV, it's as though everything went grayscale. It went into black and white television. And, how does that happen? What is that? What does that mean? But it happened a second time, because the very next day from that was how I discovered it was a death signal. The day after that, they reported Whitney Houston was dead. So somewhere around the time when she died, I was given that signal, and she had passed into the next realm. So the color went out of her. All of the life color went out. So then the next time it happened, it was some of them. I was going to try to imitate him, Bernie Mac. I can't do him. Some of my bitch. Something like that. Some milk and cookies. But I was watching him on television, and same thing happened to him, where the whole color went out of him. It went into black and white or grayscale. And so, the following day, found out that he had passed. So, moving on. Hey, Mr. Squirrel, I hear you, darling. So, moving on to some of the other signals that I've gotten. A friend of mine was a very good sound guy here in DC. He had a lot of music, because he was one of the persons who would do the sound audio engineering for the bands locally, and he would do the recordings. And so he had become a friend. This guy, he came heavy on my mind, and I was actually driving by because I had been directed to, I sometimes use my Holy Spirit as a compass or a guide, to use for my GPS as to where I'm going. And so that particular day, I was riding in the direction of the home of the guy I was telling you who does the audio engineering, or he's passed, so who did it. But at the time that I called, he answered. I was passing by his house. As he answered, I heard, and then it hung, and then the phone, I don't know, I felt it like it dropped, but I wasn't able to get back through on the phone, and I felt like maybe I should have gone to his home, and maybe I would have saved his life. But I found out the next morning that that was the last call that he took, and that he had passed. A few weeks later, another gentleman, and this was just year before last, year and a half ago. So a few months later, about this time a year ago, a bass player of mine was put heavy on my heart. I decided to call him. Again, I was led to his house. I called at that time all my friends. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for him, for Big Willie. Have you seen, have you talked to him? So one said he's in the hospital. And I was like, wow, okay. So I tried to find out what happened in the hospital, and they tell me that he had passed that day. So I'm getting this death signal stuff going on, and I'm just trying to scientifically hone in on how to harness these notions, because I'm being led in certain ways, and that when I follow the leading, it is an interesting result. So as a child, I stopped visiting people in the hospital because I wouldn't feel led to visit them in the hospital until the day before they were about to die. And I would not know it in advance. I'd seen it. I, didn't pay any attention. I just knew I was given that, now better go visit. Did the same thing for my grandmother. Visited my grandmother on the day. She passed a few hours after my visit. And, same thing for my father. My father had called me on Sunday, gave me instructions like, I need you to help me with this. I need you to help me with this. I need you to help me with this. And all things that he wanted me to go and take care of for him. And the day that he passed, I said, Pop, I'm going to give you a call after I get the vehicle, because I had totaled my car a couple days prior. I think I totaled my car on that Sunday. On that Monday. So Sunday we had this conversation. Monday I totaled my car, and he wanted me to come and take him to the bank. And I says, hey Pop, I just crashed my car. When I get my rental car, I'll come and take you. So the day I got the rental car, Spirit said, call your Pop and tell him you're not going to make it. I didn't do that. And about 3 hours after that, I got a call to say my Pops had passed. So the Spirit would have allowed me to have had that conversation with him, and possibly if I had gone on, and had done what I said versus, wanting to relax off of what I had committed to, might have happened differently. So that's water under the bridge. And I feel fine about how things happen, because everything happens for a reason. And this is still a learning lesson, a life of learning I've lived. Okay, so one more thing. I didn't put it on the list, but I actually added it later. And it was a big note, and it says holy smoke. So I have dealt with folks who have, holy smoke, Batman. I meant to say that first. But I've had people whom I've known who they've either had brain injury or have a mental illness, of sorts, who may indulge in marijuana, who when they indulge, they become a whole different being. I had one young lady, and God rest her soul, she has passed, but when she smoked, she would turn into a fairy. She became a fairy. She would be up on her tippy toes, and she would be fluttering like a butterfly. And she would sing like show tunes and do a performance. And but she had this way of her, and I've noticed it in a few other people. She was the first person that I noticed it in, and that I noticed other people. And so when she would go into that mode, that other personality, her non-elevated or before she has smoked personality, would go away and would not come back until she was actually, at a more grounded place. And so she taught me a lot of things, like folks who have a mental illness. are tuned into another dimension, are tuned into another realm. And I believe that mention schizophrenia, bipolar, although I believe bipolar has a lot more to do with the mood. And your mood, you can pick your mood. Most times, if you choose, when you make choices, when you decide that this is how I'm going to respond, you can also respond if you're going to stay stuck in that mode after you've so-called maybe got it out of your system, or was able to get it off your chest, or was able to, blow off some steam, or get an opportunity to, freely flow. So, if you stay stuck in that mode and you maintain that attitude, that mood, that choice, that decision for an extended period of time, you may get stuck into, a schizoid state. You may, if you decide to zip and zoom and bip and boom and bam and bop back and forth from one end of the spectrum to the other, it may run a groove, and that groove may start digging in so deep that you get into a rut, and that rut becomes a hole, and you fall into that hole. And you decide it's too tough to get out of this hole. I'm in a groove. I've started a habit. I am now, this is my pattern. This is my habit, my habitual way of being. So you can make choices. You can make decisions to choose to be better, to do that thing different. If you so choose, if you want a different result, to make a different choice. But if you continue to get stuck in that rut, you will continue to have the same result. And they consider that the definition of insane. You keep doing the same thing, thinking something different is going to happen. So that leads me to one of the things I wanted to talk about, which was emotional pain is the same as physical pain. You can hurt just as bad from an emotional injury as you will hurt from a physical injury. And if you have a physical injury, it is usually an indication of some other non-physical injury as well. So, does one impact the other? Yes, it does impact the other. I don't know which causes which. I believe they work in synchronicity. They work together. Sorry if you heard that as I shuffled the pages under the laptop, under the camera. But I believe that, the virtual injury, let's just call it virtual, because if you're on the phone, you're not in person. And if somebody says something to you that hurts you or cuts you to the core, to the quick, you might feel it like almost like a punch to the gut, like, you let that air out, like the impact, you got hit. They hit you with a 2-piece. You will feel that emotional injury. Now, it does sometimes affect you to the point where you can get a physical impact, and it actually show itself as, in some cases, maybe the energy wants to find a way out of your body, and whichever way is the easiest mode. Sometimes it ends up being, a heart attack, a stroke, a mild stroke, any level of version of an abrupt eruption within the vessel, the veins. The muscle, the heart. Heart happy hour. We're talking about impacts to the physical from the emotional being just as real. And again, it can be a choice. Now, the way that it becomes a choice at that point is that, I have had enough times of experiencing, and I don't want to call them, well, let's just say the energy trying to release itself, to exit from my body, for it to find a new route. I'm speaking on many things that were related to in my poem. I don't think I went over my poem as in depth, but everything that I said in my poem, I am able to have in some sort of conversational way with you about something else, how it all relates. Again, the word Yahivahi or Tetragrammaton, or they say that it's the name or the word used to express the Creator, the Lord, the God. But that those four letters in Hebrew means to be or to exist. And it is scientific in a way, what do they call it? Quantum physical in a way. And it starts with the concept of conceiving and then believing and then, being able to achieve. And I mean, that's a recipe, but that is creation. That is the magic, the attention and the intention, presenting and amassing. So yes, the heart is a muscle and it pumps gallons. I forget the amount of gallons of blood through itself a day. Tremendous amount. It's a number. It's a big number. I forget the number in particular, but it's a big number. So it is a muscle. And so if we feel the signs and symptoms are always there, if you're able to read the signs of your heart saying it, abruptly or slowly needs assistance, it will send a sign and a symbol saying, hey, can you consciously slow down this process? Can you do some things with your body that will allow you to be able to allow the blood to flow better through your vessel? And so, I usually take deep breaths and I hold my arms up. And I do breathing exercises. I do a variety of things. That's just one of the ways, but you want to find new ways to release that energy. That energy needs to come out. It needs to move around. It needs to balance out. It needs to harmonize as it develops and flows through this vessel. So you can take over some of the control because it is an autonomic activity. It does beat on its own. But I have taken my blood pressure on a couple of occasions, and when it was high, I would tell myself, well, we need to slow that down and envision it slowing down and being in a calmer place. And then when I retest, man, sometimes it's like half that number, like really, like calm and collected. Speaking of collected, this body being a light vessel, being a walking body of water. And, the formula for water, which includes oxygen, which there are, I want to say, spaces, where the light can be seen through. I don't have my phone here, but when I took the flashlight off my phone and put it on my hand, it's like you can see the light coming through the spaces. And it, like an x-ray is a high, intense light, and allowing the images to be produced by presenting light through the spaces. And so the darker the images, the more dense the object is that's being observed. So being that we are made of these particles, in which there are some spaces where there's oxygen, where the light can come through. Going back to the holy smoke, I believe that when my girlfriend would engage in the THC, I believe it elevated her to where she felt light and fluffy and fairy, and so the light and the fluffiness is not you necessarily coming apart, but you letting more light in, you being less dense, you taking on a less grave form, allowing the light to flow and for you to feel lighter. But that also brings me back to another story where I had an experience of light. And the light, I was in meditation. I was getting into some very, very deep um, mantras or mantras, and it was the music was mesmerizing. So I was in a slight trance sort of thing, and I feel I did some out of body activities, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Because in this case, I'm walking towards. Well, okay, I'm in my meditation. I met a being in my meditation, in this mantra, in this expansion of my mind. I met this being who was standing on a bridge, and it was like one of those Asian, arch bridges. So this light being was standing on the bridge, and the being, I glanced up, and as I glanced up, the being says, "Do not look upon me." But as I looked upon them, so much light was let in at that time that it spaced me out. That I want to say lost my marbles, but I was able to recollect my marbles and recollect myself and remask myself and bring myself back to, and I've told this story before where I don't think I've gathered all my marbles. I think I picked up a few other marbles that weren't my marbles that looked like the same color, the same kind, but when I reconstituted it to this being, it had some other remnants of some other DNA that was now incorporated into mine, but it wasn't the original. And so now I feel that I can relate when people say, she's so spaced out. Or, when somebody says, oh, it's light and airy. I actually feel like a lot of the terms that we speak are not as what we like. We don't take them as literal as we should. We really, really should be more like, just because, like, I used a lot of words in my poem where I said the word here and then also here, and then I duplicated the words, but I revised the meaning or the intention of utilizing that word differently each, and I used them back to back. And so, but in any case, so I wanted to mention that, that letting that light in, it not being able to have a safe or a assisted way to exit, I was actually taught what needed to be done at that moment, in that moment. So last but not least of our talk, of our conversation today, because it's getting close to 40 minutes and I want to let you go, I wanted to speak something about mental health. The month of May was Mental Health Month. And all is mine. All is mine is the first principle of the Hermetics knowledge and principles. So the mind being all, and I've said this before, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter, which means it does not materialize. It does not become an obstacle or an option if you do not allow it to manifest. And if you mind it, if you are able to keep it in your mind, if you're able to focus on it, if you're able to give it enough energy, enough of the valuable real estate of your mind, then it will amass and it will become matter, and it will materialize. A story where that has happened to me before, where I had some forethoughts of this item, of this thing, and I wanted to help someone, and I needed some, I want to say medical, but I really mean medicinal or holistic or plant-based. I was looking for some remedies for, and to be very, very honest, it was related to someone who had been diagnosed with a mental disorder. And I felt at that time that there was other ways to handle this. That if I have been taught what I've been taught, know what I know, and have been able to present and learn and grow and remember, because I know all these things. It's just a matter of me remembering these things. So once I am able to, remember what these, you could be a superhero, and that's in my poem as well. If you just get to the point where you believe these things, these are that you are in the driver's seat of your manifestations, of your laws of attraction. You can guide your ship. You can, row the boat gently down the stream. Excuse me. So I know that I was just speaking on something that some other thoughts came to mind that I wanted to share as well. I know I shared with you about me being a baby, a dog, and a person, and a scientist. Oh, I wanted to go back to being a baby, because the scientist, the dog, and me was one dream, and me being a baby in my dream was another. So the scientist, the dog, and me. So I was teaching the dog a trick. So because I had this Dr. Doolittle thing, and I digress. I'm sorry, I missed that story. So I'm glad we're back to it. So I was talking to the dog and me. So the scientist, me as the scientist, said to myself, hey, let's teach this dog how to use this key. And when I tell you, you tell the dog. And so I had learned from the scientist. The scientist told me all the scientific things I needed to know, the quantum physical part of it. And then I was to turn around and tell the dog. So I told the dog, but I told the dog with my mouth. And it later came to me, which I told you the story about the squirrels. It later came to me that they don't speak our language. My mouth means nothing to them. Me teaching them to say, to the things that you teach them by repetition or whatever, that really doesn't matter as much as what it is that you're thinking that you're saying. Because sometimes you're saying something that you don't even know that you're saying. And other times you're thinking something and saying something else. So in my dream, I told the dog didn't understand it. And so I had to learn that. That was one of those scientific experiments that I did. So another time I dreamt, and these are in the past 5-6 months that I had these dreams. So there was another time that I dreamt that I was a baby. But I was in the baby and I had the mind of an adult. And I'm trying to move my arms and I'm like, I don't have no control over these arms. I was mad. I started, and I'm like, I can see my hands, but I can't figure out how to move them. And, so over time, I was able to do more fine tuning of how to communicate with the baby, because babies love me. Babies come up to me all the time. And even though I'm saying something on my mouth, I think it has to do with my sing-songy way of talking, because music is communication, you can receive from the notes and of the whatever is spoken, sang, or played, and it's heard. So all these are vortexes. All these are funnels of ways to introduce the information to your CPU. And so it is absorbing only what you have room, space, or recognition of. Like if I put in a disk to a machine that disk does not work in that machine, it's not that the information isn't there, it's just that the format is not the format that's easily received from the other end, wherever that end is, another person, another place, another device. If the format is matched, then it will be received. There's a reception that commences on the other side, the other end of that delivery. So that to me is a mental, if you can expand your thoughts, if you can expand your knowledge, if you can expand your understanding in all of your getting, get, under, over, inner, standing. Stand on your truth. And I really feel that the mental illness is a spectrum. Like, there is the middle, those who are able to balance all of the realms. There are those who can go to the far extreme of it. I say one end is psycho, one end is psychic. Psychic is that you can tune into the higher supernatural, sacred sensitivities. And psycho is chaos. They're not receiving the signals in a way such that they're able to process them in recognizing the, I don't want to say reality or the realness, but in the interpretation of the data or the information. So if you're able to expand your sensitivities, or expand your expectations, or expand your realm of possibilities, then you're able to, because I have seen, in one case related to their diet, I was able to assist someone who was not in their right mind. In another case, I was able to use a diet to help someone who was considered schizophrenic. I've spent plenty of time with people that are bipolar, schizophrenic, paranoid, schizophrenic. I mean, all kinds. Some that were drug induced, some that were accident induced, some that were born that way, some that grew that way. As I mentioned about the holy smoke, there's another gentleman that I knew that, when he actually indulged, he became so intelligent, and he would be light and fluffy and airy too, almost like he was floating on the ground, just above, hovering kind of thing. Be able to move like, unable to move that way when not under that influence. But the knowledge would just flow, and it's as though the sight was different. I have had episodes where I feel that I have seen, and I want to say the tunnel that leads you to other realms. I started visiting other realms as a 5-year-old. But the tunnel that you can either go through real fast, or if you've ever seen on I think it was that 70s show or something like that, where in the beginning they show them in the psychedelic thing where they're floating. Sometimes it can be a slow progress through that tunnel, and sometimes it's an instant progress through that tunnel. And just remember, there's another story I need to get back to about the book. But so I've seen that tunnel, which to me has a lot of geographical, like it looks like a kaleidoscope kind of thing around it. And then, so that's what the tunnel looks like to me. That's what my interpretation is. But then I have also manifested and seen instant transition to the next realm. And I believe that, those who are mentally ill have their tuning off, their spectrum of recognition, they're like between the stations, and they're, in the static zone, which I think is where they say the poltergeist came from. But anyway, so back to the book, and then we'll be done. I'll do my word. I think we did most of the word. But so the book, when I was thinking that I wanted to heal that person's mental condition, I did not want to use Western science. I wanted to use herbology, or herbs, or natural resources. So at the time when I thought, wow, I wish I had this a book that could give me this knowledge, but I don't want anything from the most recent centuries. And this, all of a sudden, bam, on a trash can next to me as I was walking by, because I wasn't standing still, but as I was walking, I was thinking this thought, and bam, like, you ordered, here's your order up. So the universe sent me, it's almost like that movie, that TV show Magicians. There are librarians that will send you certain information, and there's certain places and portals where they can where you can go to the library, or the library can come to you, like a special order delivery. So at that time, I got a special order delivery. So I received this book, and it was from the 14th century. Old and tattered binder, but it was well kept. The information was legible. There was no problem reading the pages. It was very, very yellowed, old, very, very sensitive pages, because it was it would easily tear if I wasn't careful in turning the pages. But that book gave me all the answers that I needed, and I continued to consume and desire more knowledge to quench my thirst for further mental expansion. So when I say, you have choices, when I say that, you can choose every second, you have a second choice, is another second to second guess or choose something separate. Every second is a new life, the new chance to live life in a different way. So every time you choose the same thought, every time you get into that rut, every time you decide over and over, that's it. You can get stuck and you're going to get into a rut. So you have to change your mind and change the matter. The matters at hand. I have worked with folks who were born with mental illnesses, and we relate and we talk and we understand each other. And I have related to people who were, after the fact, impacted, as I mentioned, by drugs or by accidents. And I have found that mind is all. And I am here to attest that you are capable of being a superhero. We don't need another hero. Okay, I'm sorry. I did not mean to sing that. But Tina Turner is my go-to voice, I believe. And like Mad Max, she is an inspiration in a lot of ways. And so, yes, I don't need no other heroes. I'm the hero. She wrote, she ready, here she go. And on Love and Wellness, the jewelry. Last but certainly never least, you know about the crown, rose quartz, citrine, and clear crystal quartz. And, ooh, this piece here, ooh-wee. This medallion, it also reminds me of the print on here, but a little bit of everything. I've got ruby and red coral and rose quartz. There's some tiger's eye in here, some citrine, some amethyst, a lot of good, wonderful energy stones. This is a tiger's eye as well as the bracelet, which matches the ring. The tiger's eye on there. And ring. One Love and Wellness. And then tourmaline. OMG, for the purpose of business. Let's get down to the business of all this today. One Love and Wellness. Love plus art equals wellness. Oh, and one more thing. In reference to the Tetragrammaton. I always talk about the words. Okay, so it means, or the meaning, or the way that you can explain it is to be, which is really a whole process of things. But let's just say to be, T-O-B-E, that's 4 letters. But it also is the name of the slave. You remember I wear these glasses, and I likened them to the guy from Star Trek, LeVar Burton, who, when he wears those, that represents to me the person who is able to see through the spaces and is able to focus their thoughts beyond the spaces, focus their sight, their vision beyond the spaces and beyond space. So, but he was Toby, T-O-B-Y or T-O-B-E, depending on how you, the long E or short E or however you want to say it. So I thought that had some significance to, the roots. The revelations of things comes about in our media and in our entertainment, edutainment. If I picked up on that, and so I just kind of wanted to relate that to it, and that's the Tetragrammaton is it's a symbol, it's symbolic, and the word itself of the Creator. And so whatever we call it, Lord, God, Creator, original energy, whatever other names you might say, because all of them are representations of harnessing the energy of the Creator or of creation. So superheroes ignite, wonder powers activate. One love and wellness. Love plus art equals wellness. See you again soon. Hope you can enjoy this last song with me. This one is called Rise and Shine, and it has a very, very similar connotation as to the previous song, that, we're going to shine to the top. We ain't going to stop. We're rolling to better days to come. Hey, rock, don't stop. We're rocking, rolling, don't you stop. Topping, popping bottles, right? Better ways and better days. Don't blink. Everything inside your mind. No matter what the size, even a mustard seed to the sun, we gon' shine. Well, love and wellness, keep it tight, do it right.